What is up, everybody? It's your boy Vera here, and thank you so much for stopping by. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today I have a very special video, and with the special video comes the special notes. Of course, I'm talking about Nova. See, Nova is a great character, but also she is a tragic character, and to build into her tragedy today, to understand how unfair it is as Nova, basically everything that she is, everything that she has to go through and to get into, well, today's video will be a little bit more grim, but you can go grim without even mentioning the Dark Kingdom of Oreka, like the Ancient Kingdom, the Ancient Empire of Darkness, however you'd like to call it. Oreka is simply tragedy. There is not a single redeemable thing about Oreka except its end and the fact that at least it concluded. We are still dealing with Oreka. We're still into this entire thing, into meddling with everything that they have done in the past. And today's video will explain so many questions about Nova, and I hope that you enjoy it because it's going to be slightly long, but it will be worth it. Before we start, however, I have a playlist which is about 3 hours and a half so far of pure BDO lore, and I hope you guys can go ahead, check that out. And if you enjoy the content, please do subscribe. Consider supporting this channel however you see fit. And yeah, let's get into Nova, because Nova is amazing, as tragic and unfortunate as she is. So, the Ancient Kingdom of Oreka. We can't have Nova without that, because everything that Nova is built upon the foundations, or rather built from the foundations of the Ancient Kingdom of Oreka. And as it is the most important time of our, basically the ancient times, not so ancient really, but it's very important is what I'm trying to say. The Orekans cherished a goddess. They served a goddess known as the goddess of Thornwood, the the dark goddess, and the most important bit and how she is being described, the distorted goddess, right? This is very important, but we will not be covering it this video, unfortunately. So going into this relationship with the Orekan people, we understand this is the most brutal regime imaginable. The Orekans, they were evil to their core, irredeemable. The only thing that saved them was literally their goddess saying, "You went too far and you're done." But without going too much into this, well, the Thornwood goddess gave this tree to the Orekans known as the Kuturan tree. It is the divine tree of Oreka, known as the Kuturan. It is essentially a tree which creates a little bit of a different dynamic. The tree is capable of manifesting emotions into reality, but it takes a great toll. Bear in mind, the Orekans, well, they really engaged into sacrifices. They cultivated human beings to be bred for sacrifice, right? This is the horror of the Orekan Empire. This is what they did. Eventually, a convent is basically full female, think of it like priesthoods, let's say it like that. A convent named after a high priestess known as Echidna was created, the Echidna convent, which is the most important bit of the story. An attempt to really play, a very profound level with the god powers of the divine tree of Kuturan, which was bestowed by the goddess of Thornwood. The entirety of the idea behind the Echidna convent was to trick the Kuturan tree to create life, and life which wasn't really worthy, according to the Orekans, to be tied back to the tree for sacrifice. But here's the plot twist to this. See, the divine tree of Kuturan had healing abilities, so the sacrifices that were born from the tree would be put onto the tree as such and stuck in a perpetual state of self-healing and giving, which is again, well, a very horrific moment, because you become a living being who's only there tied up to the tree into its thorns for the sakes of one thing, and that is your blood. So this is one of the horrors, one of the horrors, and trust me, it goes even worse than this, one of the horrors of that particular time. So the Echidna convent, forgotten after the toppling of the ancient kingdom of Oreka when it brought itself to ruin. However, we have to move right now into present time, specifically Calon. So Calon, basically this is about 60 or like something like 50-ish years ago. Calon at that time was a monarchy, not the republic which we know, that is basically ruled by the nobles, the Church of Calon priests, the alien fate, and the Valkyries. So at that particular time where we are talking right now, about 50 or 60 years ago, it is still a monarchy ruled by the Sarek family. The Sarek family are essentially the lineage of kings and queens. So the Had Sarek was at that time the king of Calon, who is a person who basically hates the world. Everything that was bestowed to him from the world was nothing but negativity. Everything that was ever brought forward to his attention was always war, bickering, money. He really saw the world as his foe. He hated the world so much. He had two sons at that time, one of them known as Leonardo, who was known as the Prince. We believe him to be the factual heir because, prince. And the second son, which he has, also a prince, who is known as Guy Seric. Now, Guy Seric, I'm not entirely sure whether or not he is related to them as such as also a son, but we just think that. But it's weird that they didn't name him Prince as well, but I don't know what's the dynamic there, and it's kind of irrelevant for the story. So, at one particular point, bear in mind, the Calon kingdom is in very big turmoil. They're fighting this war with Valencia about the Blackstones. They're constantly in some sort of infighting. The Elion priest church is not doing good. It's just the kingdom is kind of weird, in a weird state, and he has to deal with all of this. And of course, he's starting to look for ways to empower the kingdom. At that particular point, we believe that he found a touching point with a very specific and important individual in this lore known as Marnie. Yes, that Marnie. I've been setting you guys up on this episode. In fact, all of the videos which I have released lately are setting you guys up, not just for this story, but for the next video. I'm going smart with those. Don't think that those are just random videos. No, I'm going smart with those. So what is going on with Marnie? How do King Dahad and Marnie even have a touching point? Well, Marnie was obsessed with something. Marnie was obsessed with creating artificial life. He was obsessed with creating the perfect being, you could say so. He had this desire to know what is the origin of humanity. This was the question which broke him. This is a question which kind of inspired his insanity. Let's just say it like this. So Marnie and Dahad went on a journey because Dahad had a clue. See, in some time ago, Dahad went into the arid lands, which are right now known as Odilita, and he came back with quite a little bit of knowledge. So he was looking for keen, likely-minded people to go ahead and try to uncover the Echidna Project. And it is where they know of the Echidna Project. See, imagine it like this. You're the mad scientist Marnie who wants to create artificial life, right? Some sort of this. And you're King Dahad who wants to bolster, right, the kingdom. He wants to create those soldiers so that essentially Calon reigns supreme, right? So it kind of just fixes the entire thing. And you find Echidna and the convent, which is over there, and of course all the people are dead from this, but rather they find the remnants of the Echidna convent. And you're like, hold up, wait a minute, this is the perfect thing. Of course, it's living, brewing apocalypse. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's like you're having two insane people, an insane story, and what is going to occur? Of course, nothing but tragedy. But see, of course, they spent quite a little bit of time there. Marnie and Dahad, they spent about 4 or 5 years, I think, something like this, total meddling with alchemy and the divine power of the Kudoran tree. They meddled, they researched, they did all types of experiments, everything, until eventually they came up with a human, a homunculi, an Onel, which was, of course, what the Echidna convent in the past were doing. Never came up with creating an artificial perfect human being, but see, the desire of the father of basically what is now known as the newborn Francesca Seric, the creation, the Onel in ancient Oreka means a fake human, a homunculi. He was wishing upon the tree to create a perfect being, to create a perfect human, something beautiful, deep down inside what he wanted. Something happened and they created Francesca Seric, known as the first homunculi, Nova. We have to move away from this particular moment and really kind of understand what's happening in the timeline. So this is happening about 60 years ago in game right now, maybe 61 already. So as important as this is, we have to kind of leave the story right now and say the following. Marnie went into Valencia, Guy, Francesca, Leonardo, and Dahad the king went into Calon, and we're going to mention about them later, but now we have to fast forward about maybe 50 to 60 years. The Ahibs have arrived post their civil war, and now they are fully operating within the arid lands of Odilita. Of course, they're in Odraxia. Everything is going on the way we know it. It went on. I have a video about those elves as well. And with that being said, of course, eventually, as they were excavating the places, they were learning more about the land which they were in. They started finding out about the ancient records of Oreka. They started finding out about the Echidna Convent, and they finally actually found the Echidna Convent. And here is where it gets very, very interesting. So upon an excavation, a landslide occurred, and the Echidna Convent was entirely unraveled, with an ancient divine tree of Kuturan in front of them, tied with a perfect homunculi human being and numerous others like her. Of course, Francesca Sarek. Now, here's where it gets very, very interesting, because the Huds with Marnie and his sons, they went into the arid lands and they essentially took Nova away. There was something very cool as a passage, which we'll talk about in a moment, but they never really covered their tracks. They kind of just collapsed the place. They didn't really take too much care about it. They were like, let's leave it as such. And of course, the Ahibs, who are not known as the most moral individuals, they find that, and they're currently operating with it. So they see this homunculi known as Nova, and they of course name her Nova, and with everything that occurs afterwards, she's born, raised, essentially kept there. And one thing which is very important here to know is that we believe that this Nova is our played character, right? We believe that that Nova found by the Ahibs is it, or at least I do believe so. We cannot properly tell. We do not know whether or not the very first homunculi born is the Francesca Sarek which the Hat took. We do not know, and we just simply don't know. All of it is guesswork. Francesca Sarek falls our Nova. Like, I'm gonna call Nova our character and Francesca Sarek of Calphion, just so there's a little bit of difference there and we do not get too confused. So Nova goes into her awakening after being given an invitation, a very important letter which she receives. Turns out that this is entirely a thing that the Ahibs have done. They invite her to actually meet an individual. So as Nova traverses into her awakening quest, as Nova really goes into the entirety of understanding her backstory, she speaks with a couple of dwarfs from Odilita who are slaves. She speaks with a couple of people who've known about this entire thing. She eventually understands that this entire thing was a charade. It was a plan of the Ahibs so that she would meet not anybody, but the real, at least so-called the first Francesca Sarek that was given birth by the Kuturan tree, or the one which was taken to Calphion. And now we have to pause the story a little bit and talk about what happens in all of those years with the Francesca Sarek of Calphion. So when Francesca, the Had, Leonardo, and Guy all went back into Calphion, the Had had a very different mindset. He was in love with what was created. He took this infant, this beautiful little child, bestowed upon her a crown which he found in the Echidna Convent, and those earrings. If you guys have played Nova when her character creation, or rather pre-creation, was a thing, the crown of Nova and the earrings are actually lore, and they're amazing because essentially this is a way that Pearl Abyss tell you you're the first Nova, right? It's a very cool little thing. It's lore induced. But with that said, as they go into Calphion, you know, everybody is very wary of this new girl and where she came from, and why the hell does the king say that this is his daughter? You know, because he went into the arid lands. They know he went there, and he's coming back from the most horrific place in BDO's lore history, and he's coming back with a child. So nonetheless, as she grows, she's being frowned upon by the church. Propaganda arises. They're kind of fighting day to day to not lose their status as the monarchs which they are, right? So the Sarek family is in very big turmoil. The king does very nice things, you could say, for his people. He promises to pay towards the lower echelon of people, right? He has this new face, pretty much nothing but love, and there is a particular painting which we will discuss later, and a key which was bestowed to Francesca Sarek. So Francesca Sarek of Calphion grows up, unfortunately frowned upon. At one point, the Had Sarek, he disavows his Valkyrie guards, so they just step aside from him, and he creates his own King's Guard, and she is actually hidden within the King's Guard so that he could see her from close, and right, she wouldn't be essentially essentially in the public's eye, taking all of the frowning, let's just say like this. Eventually, what happens was an expedition towards Valencia occurs all of this time ago, and Guy, Leonardo, and Had, the king, unfortunately lose their lives there. At least, I'm for sure certain that the Had did, but I'm not entirely sure about the other two, but I think they were a part of the expedition as well. So Francesca Sarek is no longer even considered lineage. Francesca Sarek is completely humiliated by the propaganda which the church and the nobles, now rising up to power to become essentially Calfionian republic rather than monarchy, right? So they're switching their regime up. So Francesca Sarek completely eliminated from any possibilities to even be the queen of Calfion. So a couple of things occur, and there seems to be a public trial, which we do not know what exactly transpires, but Marnie was invited to be on that particular trial, as he is literally the creator of this. We have little to no idea what happened then, but whatever occurred, it was not, absolutely not, up to Francesca Sarek's favor. One way or another, she was exiled from Calfion. It became a republic, and from then on, up until the recent times, Francesca Sarek has been trying to find an army and retake Calfion. And we meet with our Nova and Francesca Sarek at this particular point in time. And we meet, of course, upon the awakening of Nova. So as we go into the Elric Shrine, as we go and see, we meet all of those people who tell us about the Echidna Convent, all of those X or Zekans, right? We meet the Ahibs who set us on this path, and we end up fighting the real Francesca Sarek over the argument of who is the real one. And of course, the Ahibs want our Nova to be it, while the real Francesca Sarek that grew with her father, we believe to be the one which we fight and unfortunately kill in the ancient stone chamber. And here is where it gets a little bit bad, because while we do this, we don't particularly feel that much for Francesca Sarek, but it really gets to us when we understand about how the homunculi work, how the Onel work. An important thing occurs as we go ahead and we see that her blood, in a similar way to how the Echidna Convent blood of the creations from the tree rejuvenates the tree so it bestows power, we interact with this tree to acquire the thorn, which is known as Sting, the awakening weapon. But that comes with a great cost, and that is, well, it introduces to us a moral conundrum. What have we done? Because we get not just Francesca Sarek dead, but we get to inherit her memories. And this lets you know how exactly the homunculi works and operates. Think of it like one mind split into multiple bodies as types of things. And this is very, very, very important, because while we do not know exactly how it's been created, we see that interacting with the Francesca Sarek, which has been essentially laid down in front of us dead, we get to inherit her memories, her troubles, her past. We get to really feel for the character. And something that she says, very important, before we start fighting, she says, I have lost the amount of times the Ahibs have sent one of you to me, and I have defeated every single one till this day. But now we have a black spirit, and we think that this is why we managed to defeat that Francesca Sarek. And her final words to us are, you will see what it is to fight yourself till the end of times. And this is a very crucial moment, because as I said, it explains to you the homunculi situation. And now we get this particular painting, which I mentioned earlier. We know we know about it. We get this particular key, and we go over to a quest to kind of understand what's going on. But before this, well, we meet Elezra. Of course, Elezra talks to us about the Axion, the king of the dead. She speaks about the ancient times of Oreka, and something which she does is essentially she tricks us into a deal with Axion, the king of the dead from ancient Orzekan times, who is known as the most brutal king of Oreka. So we make this particular deal with Axion, king of the dead, where we will kind of take a bit of his power. We will sacrifice some of our life force so that he could exist in our mortal plane. Every time we call upon him, essentially he would take some of our health so that we usher him through. This was the initial mechanic of Nova. That was like the gimmick of the class in succession. So with that being said, we get to experience Axion. We get to see afterwards in the King's Key quest chain what follows up in terms of Nova and understanding the tragedy of Nova. So as we progress slowly and steadily, we get all of the memories back, flashes. We get what was the initial desire of Francesca Sarek of Calphion, not our Nova. She wanted to really help all of the poor souls. She was a kind individual there for the people. And what we did was, well, unfortunately, we took there is all evidence points towards this. We took away the Hot Sarek's little girl. We killed her in cold blood, and now we live with her memories tormenting us in a sense, and we can never find unisons through those acts and deeds. Long story short, upon us, this is like the final nail in the coffin for Nova, upon us finishing the King's quest, the King's Key quest chain, we get to see what really is the entire purpose. We understand from this point, and it's very evident that Marnie explains to us why he didn't, completely destroy the Echidna project. He was like, there's something about this, it needs to be let to flourish, and we understand full blown that the Ahibs were a part of this entire thing. But now you get to choose what you do. Do you go for Calphion, being essentially continuing Francesca Sarek's lineage? Do you go for the Ahibs, essentially playing into their propaganda, which I'll explain in a moment? Or do you forsake both and you go for power? Basically pave your own path in this world. And when we talk about the Ahib propaganda, it's very important to note that one of the biggest friends, or you could say allies, of Calphion are the Gnell, the Camasylvian elves. So it's in Ahib's very big interest, a very deep interest, for them to have Nova, Francesca Sarek, who is with the clear mantle of the Thornwood goddess being with her, with all of the things which she has done, all of this, for her to be usurping the throne of Calphion, because this means that Calphion will immediately become allied with the Ahibs of the Arid Land. This is kind of the dynamic with Nova. And the Valkyries, well, you might say, well, won't the Valkyries be against this, like it's Elion versus the Thornwood Goddess, it's two religions conflict? Well, the Valkyries were very wronged in the past. And this is one of those plots which we will see hopefully in the future unfold, to see what will Francesca Sarek do. Because if she wants to usurp the throne, she can. The Valkyries will immediately come with her. They have absolutely no reason for them not to. Or will she actually go ahead and, forsake the Thornwood Goddess and go with everything that she has done, all of the powers that she has claimed for herself, and essentially be the Francesca Sarek which she slaughtered, continuing her legacy as from guilt, you could say. Or finally, disavow all of these and just simply pursue power. We have to talk about one of the heartbreaking moments here, and that is, of course, the particular picture, which we spoke about, this painting. The painting you get at the end of Nova's quest chain from the King's Key. And the painting, once you cleanse it, because it is essentially full black painting, it's called the Curse painting. With essence of the Kuturan, which you recover through the quest, you get to cleanse this painting to see what's actually on it. And you see the Hot Sarek hugging little baby Francesca Sarek. And it is so cute, it's so unreasonable, and it really adds insult to injury of what we have done. Because we killed the original, let's just say, like, not the first. There is no such thing as first of the Kuturan. You're just firstborn. You're not better than the last. The trick about Nova and understanding her really grim future is that she will be stuck into fighting herself, and all of the homunculi with the tree keeps on spewing until the end of time. It is simply the pursuit of the perfect being of Marnie, right? And the twisted ideas which come from the Kuturan tree, and it often gives you exactly what you want to create the perfect being. And this is one of the tragedies of Nova, that she will be always stuck into this loop, never being capable of going anywhere for anything. She will be chased down if she doesn't essentially do what the Ahibs want. She will be chased down if she goes into Calphion. She'll be chased down if she wants power. This is one of the tragedies. This is actually the tragedy of Nova, and it's why I like her so much, because it's just absurd how grim her future looks. And if she ever comes to usurp the throne as consciously being allied with the Ahibs, a war of such magnitudes will happen. And it's just going to be an apocalypse through and through. But let me tell you one thing, man. it's gonna be a sight to see. So yeah, sorry if this video was a little bit too grim, dark. Unfortunately, this is Nova's lore. I hope I set the tone right. And yeah, fellas, I'll see you soon. Enjoy. Bye bye.